Hi everyone, and welcome to Apex Insider, the YouTube series bringing you insight and opinion from thought leaders in the passenger experience industry. Apex Insider is made possible by the support of Global Eagle. Connect, entertain, empower with innovation from Global Eagle. I'm your host, Maryann Simson, Director of Apex Media, the multi-channel news platform of the Airline Passenger Experience Association. In this edition, we're going to be talking about the very important and wide-ranging topic of accessibility in air travel. We're very fortunate to have with us in the studio today Geraldine Lundy, Passenger Accessibility Manager for Virgin Atlantic, and Chris Wood, founder of Flying Disabled. Well, welcome you two. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you.
Geraldine, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your role at Virgin Atlantic and the sort of initiatives that you oversee on a day-to-day basis?
I'm the Accessibility Manager at Virgin Atlantic, and I've got two main aspects to my role. One is to make sure the airline complies with all disability legislation, and the other one is to assist our customers with disabilities so that they can have the best experience possible when they travel with us. Some of the initiatives that I've been working on is caring for our customers with vision impairments, helping customers with hidden disabilities, and then helping people who use wheelchairs, which is where Chris comes in.
Okay, and then just building on from that, Chris, can you tell us a little bit more about Flying Disabled?
Certainly, yeah. I started the campaign a couple of years ago, now 2.5 years nearly, really, and it's really got some traction, and it would seem that airlines need to step up a little bit to bring more accessibility inside the cabin, and a wheelchair is one of those, and I think it's about time we, as the industry, the airline industry, conformed like land and sea.
So airlines, by not having the best accessibility in terms of travel options for people with disabilities, are missing out on some big dollars and a big passenger demographic. Can you guys give us an idea of the size of the market we may be missing out on right now?
Yeah, Chris, give the figures.
Well, yeah, in the UK it's about 250 billion. There's a share of that to be had. I think it's 8 trillion worldwide. So again, it's a share of the market, which I think most airline executives surely would look at that and go, we must have some of that market. And how do we do this? So the process is to start from that point, really. And I think any businesses are looking for growth in their margins and their profit, and there's a market there just waiting to be tapped into.
And then when I look at what the number of people with a disability are flying, either through an airport or with an airline, if you think there's about 15 to 20% of the customer population who have a disability, you only have about 2% of those who fly. So you've got a huge number of people who don't fly, and then that's a huge amount of money, Chris has just said, that businesses are losing out on.
And I think with an aging population, and as well people are living longer and wanting to get the most out of life into later and later years, we're going to see even more people who have restricted mobility who are looking to get around and still continue to do fun things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and it's a conversation I have regularly in and around the aviation world. It's the most common subject that comes up. Quite often when I talk about disability, we then move on to someone saying, yeah, my mum or my father, they don't fly anymore, they just don't feel it's for them. It's the undignified process of being carted around, and it's just unpleasant. So it really is, it's a subject which is coming close to home in the industry itself now, I think.
Geraldine, you mentioned helping people with visual impairments sort of navigate the air travel process. A few weeks ago, we were in Hamburg for the Aircraft Interiors Expo, and a big part of that event is, of course, the Crystal Cabin Awards. Yeah. And taking home the award for in-flight entertainment and connectivity was Blue Box. Yes. For a project that they worked very closely with you on. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yes, thank you, Maryann. This was amazing. We installed some fantastic in-flight entertainment on our aircraft, but feedback from our customers with vision impairments, it didn't work for them. We thought, what can we do to help? And we realised we've got tablets on board, so I asked our onboard media team, can we make our tablet accessible? They worked with Blue Box. Blue Box built the app, they tested it with Guide Dogs for the Blind, and all of a sudden we can offer accessible entertainment to all of our customers who have a vision impairment. And we've got it on all our aircraft, and it's fabulous.
It certainly has gotten a lot of media coverage. I know Apex Media has written quite extensively about the topic. Have other airlines sort of responded and said, hey, what did you do there, and how can we get on board with that?
I hear through the grapevine that they are in conversations with Blue Box.
Okay.
And that's fantastic. And I also have heard that Blue Box are going to give a donation for every new customer to Guide Dogs for the Blind.
That's good.
So it's a win-win for all, for the customer, the charity, and the companies involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah, really great news. It's incredible to see something like that being recognized on such a big scale. Chris, you've been working with Geraldine and Virgin Atlantic as well. Can you talk a bit about that?
Certainly, yeah. In fact, it was nearly a year ago, wasn't it, that a gentleman called Phil Mayer asked me into Virgin to discuss it, and Geraldine thankfully joined me. And in the discussion, Geraldine's professionalism came in and said we should have a symposium. And so we did in September. We brought a lot of stakeholders, a lot of regulators, and we sat down, and as it was put out there, the first ever wheelchair in the cabin symposium. And from there, we picked up a lot of momentum. There's been a lot of work going on since that date, and we now have some real traction both in government and in the airlines. There's more people coming forward and saying, Chris, how can I help? How can I help? The solution is what we need, and that's where we're going to go to, but the solution has to be with the airlines in mind in terms of how we structure that cabin. I think it would be very unfair to just not listen to their concerns.
So more specifically, Chris, what you are campaigning for is for wheelchair users to be allowed to bring their own wheelchair onto the aircraft rather than checking it. Why is this so important?
Okay, for me personally, with two children, with the young adults now at 22, 25, they pretty much live their life in a wheelchair. The airline seat is not comfortable for them. In fact, posturally, it's not clever at all. And if they can sit in their own chair, A, they're comfortable, and B, they also know their wheelchair will arrive at the other end in one piece, and that is crucial. It's their legs, it's their way of getting around. And I think at the moment a lot of people decide that flying is not for them if they're in a wheelchair, for that simple, scary point that just every now and again, through an accident, they'll break.
So Geraldine, from the airline perspective, obviously there is a desire to make all passengers comfortable and make air travel as easy as possible for everyone, but there are some operational, some health and safety, some economical reasons why this is a little easier talked about than actually achieved. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes, I hope to see this happen, but there are some steps that we're going to have to do to enable it to happen. Some great work has been done of making it safe to tie a wheelchair down in the cabin, but we then have to get the wheelchair frame, which is safe to be tied down. Spaces in the cabin have to be identified. There has to be access to those spaces because we won't be able to put a wheelchair at an aircraft door. So we've got to find ways of making the space and then access to the space. But at last, everybody's working together to try and find a solution, and that's really great news.
And to be clear, we're not talking about removing entire seat rows or something like that. We're really looking at a flexible solution that when the airline knows they're going to be receiving a passenger in a wheelchair, that they can modify the cabin in some way to make the space available.
I think that's the fairest solution. And also it probably won't happen until someone orders, the solution is there and it can then be put on a new aircraft that's being built. Perhaps there's an opportunity to retrofit, but let's not do that. Let's try and find the solution first and have the airlines around the table talking about it, what's best for them, and then we can, correspond that with what's best for those who need to access the cabin in a wheelchair.
But so tides are shifting. I think, the campaign, the hard work that people like you guys have been doing have been raising a lot of awareness and getting some stakeholders involved and working together and thinking about solutions. Can you talk a little bit about some of the progress that's been made, who you've been having conversations with, and I know on a legislative level that there's been some progress as well.
Certainly in the UK, the aviation strategy was published last week, and in there was a part of it which alluded to the fact that they want to look into getting wheelchairs to access the cabin. So that's our government. That's what they want to look at, and there'll be a consultation paper, and there'll also be a roundtable in Westminster where we hope to bring the stakeholders together, and that's with our current aviation minister, Baroness Sugg, who's agreed to this. So there's some great work being done there, and we're also challenging the wheelchair companies to come up with something that is cabin safe, that is also working with the airlines and the ARSA in the first place to make sure that safety is not compromised.
And I underline that as well. I mean, years ago when I started in this role, I felt a little bit like a lone wolf crying in the wind. And now there are people in industry, people in the charities, and people in government and regulators who are listening and are prepared to do something. And I think that's great. I think that's great for the business and it's great for the customer. So just watch this space.
Yeah.
On the OEM level, or let's say the parts manufacturers level, have you seen a lot of sort of willingness to participate from that camp as well?
There's a lot of discussion. I think it's whoever puts their foot forward first will be the first ones to engage. I think they're all talking. They all know something's going to happen. As somebody in Airbus told me, we're just waiting for the trigger. Who is the trigger? I hope it's not legislation. Nobody really wants that. It's much better to evolve out the industry itself rather than have a government suddenly point the finger and start legislating. Why not do it all? So it's a great PR exercise. How good is that? It's a great PR exercise.
It sure is. All right, well, that's all the time that we have for this episode. However, we'd like the conversation to continue, of course, online. Do you guys have anywhere you can point our viewers to where they can learn more or get involved somehow?
Well, for me, I have the website Flying Disabled. Most of the posts I put up on Twitter, which I'm at Flying Disabled at, and happy to take any comments and just really invite anybody to come forward and see if we can take this a little bit further. I know I have Virgin alongside helping me out. I also have Priestman Good as well, who are incredible cabin designers, and they're very much supporting what I do. So I've got two of the finest UK airline companies, I think is the best way to put it, or associates behind me, which is really humbling to know.
Fantastic.
And for us at Virgin, if anybody's got any ideas or any questions, please send them into our special assistance team, special_assistance@fly.virgin.com, and we'll be happy to hear them.
Hey, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for anybody who's interested in learning more about the Airline Passenger Experience Association, we'll hope you'll visit us at www.apex.aero. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and join us next time for Apex Insider.